The forest was alive with sounds that no human had ever heard before. Trees stretched like giant hands into the dim light, their leaves glowing faintly with a soft green shimmer. Milo ran, heart hammering, small feet crunching over roots that twisted like snakes across the forest floor. He had been lost for hours, and each shadow seemed to move with a mind of its own. His chest burned and tears streaked dirt across his face, but he did not stop. Behind him, a distant roar rolled through the canopy, shaking branches and sending a flock of glowing birds scattering into the night. Milo stumbled into a small clearing and froze. There, in the center, was a nest of hatchlings, their tiny bodies curled together. Their scales reflected the faint light like scattered jewels, and they chirped softly in a way that sounded almost like whispers. He had never seen creatures like this, and a shiver ran down his spine. Then a larger shape moved at the edge of the clearing, a shadow that stretched across the ground and blocked the faint moonlight. Milo's stomach dropped. The adult dragon was watching. Its eyes glowed orange, sharp and calculating. Every muscle in its body tensed as if ready to strike. Milo swallowed hard and pressed himself against a fallen log. He could feel the fear radiating from the hatchlings as they shifted closer together. One tiny dragonling let out a soft whine and Milo froze. He knew any wrong move could end badly, but he could not leave them alone. Taking a trembling breath, he stepped into the clearing, hands raised, trying to seem small and non-threatening. "I'm not here to hurt you," he whispered. His voice sounded tiny, but for some reason, it carried in the stillness of the forest. The hatchlings looked at him with wide, luminous eyes, curiosity battling fear. One stepped forward, its tiny claws barely making a sound on the mossy ground. Milo knelt slowly, letting his hand hover above it. The hatchling hesitated, then nudged its head against his palm. A small smile broke across Milo's face, relief flooding him for a moment. The adult dragon shifted, low in the shadows, wings flexing as if testing the air. Milo could feel the tension in the forest rising, a sharp, dangerous energy that made his skin prickle. Yet, the hatchling's trust gave him courage. He took a deep breath and whispered a soft lullaby his mother used to sing. His voice quivered, but the gentle notes seemed to reach the tiny dragons, and they settled closer against him. Suddenly the adult dragon made a sound, something between a hiss and a growl, but it did not charge. Milo's heart leapt. He realized that this creature, massive and terrifying, was not immediately attacking him. It was watching, studying, thinking. Sweat ran down Milo's temples, but he refused to step back. He kept his eyes steady on the dragon, trying to show he meant no harm. The hatchlings moved slightly, nestling against his side, and Milo felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could survive this night. A branch snapped sharply to his left, and both Milo and the dragons froze. From the shadows, a pair of glowing eyes watched them. Milo tensed, ready to run, but the hatchlings did not react. They seemed to know the creature approaching. It was smaller, slinking closer like a predator testing its prey. Milo's mind raced. If he ran, he could leave the hatchlings defenseless. If he stayed, he might die. Then an idea struck him, a risky, desperate gamble. He grabbed a handful of moss and threw it toward the smaller creature, hoping to distract it. The moss floated to the ground with a soft thump. The creature paused, sniffing, then slunk away into the deeper shadows. Milo exhaled, barely believing his luck. The adult dragon shifted again, wings rustling like soft thunder. Milo froze, unsure what this meant. Then it lowered its massive head slightly, tilting it as if studying him more closely. He realized with a shock that the dragon was not just assessing danger, it was curious. Milo dared to take another cautious step forward, reaching toward the hatchlings. One of them leaned fully into his hand, trusting him in a way that no human had ever been trusted before. Milo's heart pounded, not with fear but with a fierce determination. He would protect them. Somehow he would survive this night. Just as he allowed himself a brief moment of hope, a deafening roar split the forest, louder than the first. The adult dragon recoiled and Milo's stomach sank. Something massive was approaching, something neither he nor the dragons had expected. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Milo tightened his grip on the hatchlings, his mind racing. He had survived this long by thinking fast, but now the danger was greater than anything he had imagined. Whatever came next would test every ounce of courage he had left. The shadows shifted, the glowing eyes multiplied, and Milo realized the forest was far from done with him. Milo's small hands trembled as he pressed the hatchlings closer to his chest. The roar had faded, but the forest did not feel any safer. Shadows flickered between the phosphorescent trees, twisting like snakes in the dim light. He could hear faint, crunching footsteps moving in patterns that did not belong to any bird or small animal. The adult dragon hovered nearby, massive wings brushing the treetops, eyes fixed on Milo with something that felt like both warning and fascination. He could not move too quickly, one wrong gesture, and the fragile trust he had earned could vanish in an instant. The hatchlings chirped softly, their whispers mingling with the rustle of leaves. Milo scanned the clearing, heart hammering, trying to figure out a plan. He remembered the moss trick from before and looked around. The ground was littered with glowing crystals, strange shards that reflected the faint green light of the forest. An idea formed in his mind, risky but perhaps the only way to survive the approaching threat. If he could use the crystals to create distractions, he might lead whatever was coming away from the hatchlings. A sudden movement froze him in place. From the shadows at the edge of the clearing, a pair of enormous, glowing eyes emerged. Milo's stomach dropped. This creature was larger than the last one, with armor-like scales that glinted even in the dim forest light. It had no wings, but its long, segmented tail lashed back and forth, cutting the air with a sharp hiss. Milo could feel the vibrations of its movements through the ground, a warning of the power it carried. He swallowed hard, knowing that if it attacked now, none of the hatchlings would survive. Milo made a choice. He crouched low, pressing the hatchlings into a hollow in the roots of an old tree. One of the tiny dragons whimpered softly, and Milo murmured reassurance, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at him. "It's okay. I won't let anything happen to you," he said, more to convince himself than the hatchlings. Then carefully he picked up a handful of the glowing crystals and flung them toward the forest edge. The crystals clattered against branches and rocks, scattering light across the trees. The larger creature froze, momentarily distracted by the sudden flashes. Milo's heart leapt. He didn't waste a second. Gripping the hatchlings tightly, he darted behind the largest tree he could find, using its trunk as cover. The adult dragon flared its wings, and Milo realized it was trying to shield the hatchlings from the creature. The dragon's body was a living barrier, enormous and terrifying, yet somehow protective. Milo's fear shifted into awe. He had never thought he would rely on a creature so powerful for help, yet here it was, acting almost as if it understood his intent. He had to act quickly before the predator refocused. Milo glanced around and spotted a narrow path between two clusters of glowing ferns. It was risky, too narrow for him to run fast, and the creature could easily block him, but it led deeper into the forest, away from the main clearing. Taking a deep breath, he whispered to the hatchlings, "Stay close. We move together." They chirped softly, almost as if they understood him. Milo had no choice, he would have to lead them through the unknown. He sprinted along the path, moving as quietly as possible, but the ground shifted beneath his feet, roots tangling around his ankles. The predator had noticed him, its hiss echoing through the trees. Milo felt panic rising but forced himself to focus. He threw another handful of crystals behind him. The light flashed across the predator's eyes, blinding it momentarily. The creature lunged, claws digging into the earth, and Milo barely dove to the side, dragging a hatchling with him. The adult dragon let out a low, warning growl, swooping closer to intercept the attack. Breathing heavily, Milo realized that he had bought only seconds, not safety. The predator circled, testing the path, while the adult dragon flared its wings, keeping it at bay. Milo's mind raced. He remembered the lullaby, the way it had calmed the hatchlings earlier. An idea struck him, perhaps he could combine sound with movement to guide the creatures. He began humming softly, low and steady, letting the vibrations carry through the forest. The hatchlings responded immediately, leaning into him, chirping back. He could see the adult dragon's ears flick, and it tilted its head as if listening. The predator hesitated, confused by the sound and the sudden coordination of Milo and the hatchlings. Milo's pulse pounded in his ears, but he kept humming, stepping carefully forward, one foot after another. Every motion had to be precise. One stumble could trigger an attack. The adult dragon shifted, wings brushing the canopy, keeping the predator's attention divided. Milo's plan was working. The creature, frustrated and cautious, backed away slightly, unsure whether to continue the pursuit. Then, without warning, the ground beneath Milo trembled violently. A tree, massive and ancient, creaked and began to topple toward the path. Milo lunged forward, grabbing a hatchling and rolling to the side just in time. Another hatchling's claws caught in his jacket, and he yanked it free as the trunk crashed where he had been seconds ago. Dust and debris filled the air, and Milo gasped, coughing, heart racing. He had survived again, but barely. The predator retreated a few steps, wary now, while the adult dragon blocked any further advance. Milo pressed the hatchlings against his chest, sweat mixing with dirt on his face. His chest heaved and he whispered, "We're not safe yet, but we're alive." He glanced at the adult dragon, which seemed to nod slightly as if acknowledging their fragile alliance. Just when Milo allowed himself a brief moment of relief, a sudden screech split the forest. Multiple shadows emerged from the darkness, smaller, faster creatures moving in coordinated packs. They were heading straight for the clearing. Milo froze, horror clawing at his chest. The hatchlings whimpered in alarm, and the adult dragon stiffened, wings flaring defensively. Milo's mind raced. There was no room to run, no way to hide. And yet he knew he had to act. He tightened his grip on the hatchlings and took a deep breath, heart pounding, knowing that the next move would decide everything. The forest of whispering scales was about to reveal its deadliest secret, and Milo had no choice but to face it. Milo's heart pounded so hard he thought it might burst. The shadows advanced faster now, a swarm of lithe, armored creatures, their eyes glowing a cold, white light. The adult dragon flared its wings, creating a wall of motion between Milo and the predators, but even its massive size couldn't hold them back for long. Milo pressed the hatchlings tightly against him, feeling their tiny bodies shivering with fear, and realized that running alone would not save them. He had to think and he had to act, fast. Then he remembered the patterns, the rhythms of the dragons. The adult dragon had moved in response to his humming, reacting to the lullaby he had improvised. The hatchlings had chirped back, creating a strange, synchronized cadence. If he could control it, maybe he could guide not just the dragon but the swarm as well. Milo took a deep breath, keeping the hatchlings calm against his chest, and began humming again, slow and steady, letting the vibrations carry through the ground. His voice quivered, but the rhythm was firm, almost commanding. Something remarkable happened. The adult dragon paused, tilting its massive head toward him. The swarm hesitated, frozen mid-step, their glowing eyes scanning him as if trying to understand. Milo's mind raced. He adjusted the pitch slightly, matching the subtle heartbeat-like pattern he had noticed in the hatchlings' chirps. The tiny dragons responded immediately, moving closer, their bodies trembling in resonance with his voice. The adult dragon shifted again, lowering itself toward the ground, wings flaring to shield him and the hatchlings. Milo felt a surge of hope. He realized he could influence them at least enough to create a window of opportunity. But just as the first hint of a plan formed, a new sound split the forest, a roar far louder, deeper, and more terrifying than anything he had heard before. The ground shook beneath him. Leaves fell from the trees like rain. The shadows froze, but this time the adult dragon stiffened as well. Milo looked up and saw it. A creature larger than the others, towering on four massive legs with armored plates covering its body and a mouth lined with jagged teeth that gleamed even in the faint light. Its eyes glowed a sinister red. The predators he had been managing with rhythm and distraction were nothing compared to this. Milo's breath caught. For a moment, all he could do was stare, feeling the weight of the forest pressing down around him. Then he realized that running would get them killed instantly. He had to think and he had to move in a way no human had ever tried before. The hatchlings chirped softly, sensing his panic, and Milo whispered to them, "We'll be okay. I promise. Just trust me." He didn't know if he would survive, but he had no other choice. He scanned the clearing quickly and noticed the glowing crystals scattered across the ground. They reflected the dim light in sharp flashes when moved or thrown. An idea struck him. Maybe he could lure the smaller predators into a trap using the crystals while keeping the larger creature distracted with movement and sound. Milo's pulse raced, but he acted. He dropped a few crystals a few meters ahead, letting them roll and clatter, scattering beams of light across the forest. The smaller creatures snapped toward them immediately, their glowing eyes following the flashes. Milo grabbed a hatchling and darted toward the left, humming a faster rhythm to keep the adult dragon aligned with him. It worked partly. The smaller predators pursued the moving lights, but the massive creature lunged, closing the distance faster than Milo anticipated. He ducked behind a moss-covered boulder, heart racing. The adult dragon roared, a sound so powerful it shook the leaves from the trees, forcing the giant predator to hesitate. Milo realized the dragon was not just defending, it was coordinating, giving him time to act. His mind raced. He needed a more decisive solution. Milo spotted a narrow crevice between two ancient trees, barely wide enough for the predators but too small for the adult dragon to block. He could lead the smaller swarm through, trapping them momentarily, but he had to distract the larger beast. Milo's eyes fell on the moss in his hands. Without thinking, he hurled it directly at the massive creature's eyes. The moss exploded in a cloud of spores and dirt, stinging the predator's vision. It roared in frustration, thrashing its head and giving Milo the chance he needed. He sprinted through the crevice, hatchlings clutched tightly, feeling the walls of the trees scrape against him. The smaller predators followed, trapped by the narrow space, their glowing eyes bouncing off the tree trunks as they lunged. Milo barely kept his balance, stumbling once, catching himself against a tree, and praying the hatchlings wouldn't slip from his grip. His strategy was dangerous, but it worked. The swarm was momentarily contained, and the massive creature was blinded enough to delay its attack. Milo gasped for breath, heart hammering, and allowed himself a brief glance at the adult dragon. It had followed the rhythm of his humming the entire way, circling protectively, wings brushing the canopy to block any attack from above. Milo realized something incredible: he was not just surviving. He was influencing these creatures, creating a bond no human had ever formed. The hatchlings chirped in harmony with him, tiny bodies pressed close, a heartbeat against his own. The forest, which had seemed impossible and deadly, now seemed responsive to him. Then, just as relief threatened to settle in, a sudden screech split the air, a sound sharper, higher, more urgent than before. From the shadows of the forest, dozens more creatures emerged, moving with calculated precision, their eyes glowing white like icy fire. Milo froze, terror gripping him. The adult dragon's wings flared defensively, but even it could not cover all angles. Milo's pulse raced, and he realized that his small victories so far had only delayed the inevitable. But Milo did not retreat. He pressed the hatchlings closer and began humming again, slower this time, modulating rhythm and pitch. The creatures paused, tilting their heads, unsure of the strange human's control. Milo felt a spark of determination, courage pushing through fear. He would not let the hatchlings be taken. Not tonight. Not ever. And then, through the whispers of the forest, he heard something unexpected, a low, resonant growl from behind the shadows. Not one of the predators, but something else. Something watching, waiting. Milo's heart froze. Whatever it was enormous, intelligent, and aware of him. He tightened his grip, eyes wide, chest pounding, knowing that the next few moments would decide everything. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the hatchlings chirped softly, and Milo realized this was more than survival. It was the first step toward a bond that could change everything. And then, a shadow moved differently than the others, rising from the trees, bigger than the adult dragon, its glowing eyes fixed on him. Milo's stomach dropped. This was not a fight he had expected. This was something far more dangerous. Milo's lungs burned, and his heart raced like a drum in his chest. The enormous shadow moved closer, dwarfing the adult dragon, its glowing eyes piercing through the dim forest light. The smaller predators, trapped in the narrow crevice, hissed and snapped, but their fear was secondary now. Milo realized the creature in front of him was different, intelligent, calculating, and terrifyingly fast. One swipe of its massive claws could end everything he had fought for. Yet, the hatchlings pressed against him, their trust and tiny warmth giving him courage. He forced himself to breathe evenly, thinking fast. Running blindly would get them all killed. He glanced around the clearing. The glowing crystals were scattered, reflecting light across the trees. Perhaps he could use them again, but this time in a more decisive way. He grabbed a handful and flung them into the air. Light scattered in all directions, creating flashes and shadows. The enormous creature recoiled slightly, blinking, distracted. Milo seized the moment. "Stay close," he whispered to the hatchlings. They chirped softly, moving instinctively with him. The adult dragon flared its wings, a living shield, positioning itself between Milo and the massive predator. Milo realized that he had only one chance. He had to force the creature into the path of the smaller predators he had trapped. He sprinted toward the crevice, humming a rapid, commanding rhythm. The adult dragon responded instantly, circling and guiding the predator with low growls and sudden wing flares. Milo could feel the energy in the forest responding, as if every creature was attuned to the unfolding rhythm. The predator lunged, claws scraping the earth, tail thrashing. Milo dodged, narrowly avoiding a swipe, and hurled another handful of crystals into its eyes. The flashes blinded it just long enough for him to guide it toward the crevice. The smaller predators snapped and lunged as Milo predicted. Chaos erupted, glowing eyes, snapping jaws, and flailing tails created a dangerous barrier. The massive creature stumbled, momentarily blocked by the trapped predators. Milo ducked behind a tree, clutching the hatchlings to his chest, sweat and dirt streaking his face. He could feel the adult dragon's presence above him, wings brushing against branches, keeping the giant predator contained. Milo realized the impossible had happened. The dragon and the predators were now reacting to him, listening to him, coordinating with him. The thought made his chest swell with pride, but there was no time to dwell on it. The massive predator roared, shaking the forest floor, and Milo knew it would not be contained for long. Looking around desperately, Milo spotted a fallen tree stretching across the clearing, thick and sturdy. He could use it as a barrier or trap if he acted fast. With a deep breath, he sprinted, the hatchlings clutched tightly, and pushed the largest one ahead, forcing it into position. The adult dragon understood immediately, swooping down and nudging the massive predator toward the fallen tree. The predator hesitated, confusion flickering in its glowing eyes, and Milo saw his chance. He ran alongside, humming a controlled rhythm, keeping the hatchlings calm and guiding the predator with precision. The creature lunged again, but the adult dragon blocked it just enough to direct it toward the barrier. Milo's pulse hammered in his ears. One misstep, one wrong note in his humming and it could all fall apart. The predator crashed against the fallen tree, stunned by the impact. The smaller predators scattered, fleeing deeper into the shadows, leaving the clearing silent except for the hiss of displaced leaves. Milo dropped to his knees, chest heaving, clutching the hatchlings close. The adult dragon lowered its massive head, eyes glowing softly, and nudged him gently with its snout. Milo realized it was acknowledging him, not just as a survivor but as a leader, someone who had earned its respect. The hatchlings chirped softly, pressing against him, tiny hearts beating in sync with his own. For the first time since the night began, Milo felt a spark of hope. But the forest was not done. From the trees above, a low rumble grew, vibrations shaking the ground beneath him. Milo looked up and froze. Something was descending, something massive, taller than any dragon he had seen. Its wings spanned wider than the clearing, and its shadow swallowed everything beneath it. The adult dragon growled, flaring its wings defensively, but even it looked uncertain. Milo swallowed hard. He realized that the night's battle had only been a prelude. The real danger, the one that would test him like never before, was arriving now. Milo pressed the hatchlings closer, whispering, "We can do this. Together." His voice was small but steady. The adult dragon let out a low, resonant roar, circling above him protectively. Milo's mind raced, considering every possibility. He had survived impossible odds so far by thinking fast, by trusting his instincts, by connecting with the creatures around him. Now he had to take a bolder step, one that no human had ever dared. He glanced at the massive shadow descending, calculating. There was a pattern in its approach, a rhythm he could exploit. Milo began humming again, louder this time, using the hatchling's chirps to amplify the rhythm, creating a pulse that resonated through the forest. The adult dragon responded immediately, flapping its wings in sync, creating turbulence in the air. The massive creature faltered, wings beating against the pressure, confused by the strange, coordinated attack. Milo saw his chance to act directly. With a cry, he leapt forward, placing himself between the hatchlings and the creature, arms wide, letting the rhythm guide it, letting the adult dragon coordinate the movement. It was reckless, terrifying, and impossible, but it worked. The predator faltered, swerving slightly, disoriented by the strange human-led harmony. Milo felt the adrenaline surge through him. This was no longer about surviving, this was about leading, commanding, and protecting. And then, as the predator stumbled back, a low, resonant voice echoed through the clearing. Not a roar, not a hiss, but something deeper, intelligent, deliberate. Milo froze. The forest fell silent, the wind holding its breath. The adult dragon stiffened, wings raised, eyes locked on the source. The hatchlings whimpered softly, sensing the change. Milo's mind raced. Something far greater than anything he had faced was here, and it was aware of him. He tightened his grip on the hatchlings, chest pounding, and realized that the night's trials were only the beginning. Whatever had descended, whatever had spoken, would change everything. Milo had faced impossible odds and survived, but the true test, the one that would decide the fate of him, the hatchlings and the dragons, was about to begin. The shadows shifted, the trees groaned, and Milo knew, this was far from over. Milo pressed the hatchlings tightly to his chest, heart pounding as the massive shadow hovered above the clearing. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The adult dragon flared its wings, circling protectively, but even it seemed wary of the newcomer. Milo realized in a rush of awe and fear that this was no ordinary predator. Its presence radiated intelligence and power. Whatever it was, it had watched him and now it had decided he was worth noticing. The hatchlings chirped nervously, tiny bodies trembling. Milo whispered softly, "It's okay, we'll be safe." He wasn't sure if he fully believed the words, but he had to project courage. The adult dragon shifted closer, lowering its head to shield the hatchlings. Milo realized that they were all looking to him, not just for guidance but for hope. The weight of responsibility pressed on his chest, heavier than any fear he had felt before. He could not fail them. Taking a deep breath, Milo began humming again, slow and steady, letting the rhythm carry through the clearing. The hatchlings responded immediately, chirping softly in harmony. The adult dragon flared its wings in sync, and even the massive shadow hesitated, wings trembling in the air. Milo felt a strange connection forming, not just with the hatchlings but with all of the dragons in the clearing. His voice, small but determined, was shaping the flow of the forest itself. The massive creature descended lower, eyes locked on Milo. For a terrifying moment he thought it might strike. Then, unexpectedly, it lowered its head, almost bowing slightly. Milo's chest tightened. The pattern of fear and aggression he had seen in all dragons before, hesitation, curiosity, distrust, was changing. The massive creature studied him as if recognizing something unique. Milo's courage, his persistence, his willingness to protect even the smallest life, it mattered. Somehow they knew. Slowly, Milo placed the hatchlings gently on the moss-covered ground. He stepped back, hands raised, giving them space while keeping his eyes on the enormous creature. The hatchlings chirped and nestled together, no longer terrified, sensing the moment of peace. The adult dragon lowered its wings, allowing Milo more room. For the first time that night, a silence fell over the forest, thick but not oppressive, charged with the tension of unspoken understanding. Milo took another breath and looked around. The smaller predators he had trapped earlier had vanished, retreating into the deeper shadows. The massive creature, once a symbol of impending death, now hovered calmly, its eyes tracking Milo but without aggression. Milo realized the significance. He had survived, yes, but more than that, he had forged a connection between species that had never trusted humans. For the first time, dragons might see a human not as prey or threat, but as something capable of leadership, empathy, and courage. His hands itched to touch the adult dragon to solidify this bond, but he held back, letting the creature make the first move. Slowly, it lowered its massive head closer to him. Milo dared to reach out, fingers brushing against the smooth, warm scales. The dragon did not recoil. Instead, it exhaled softly, a low rumble vibrating through the clearing. Milo's chest swelled with a mixture of relief, pride, and awe. He had survived the night, protected the hatchlings, and earned the trust of beings that had feared humans for centuries. The hatchlings chirped happily, tiny voices blending with the dragon's low rumble. Milo smiled, his fear giving way to exhilaration. This was more than survival, it was victory, a proof of what a human could do when courage, intelligence, and determination were applied against impossible odds. The forest no longer felt like a trap. It felt like a place where bonds could be formed, where trust could be built, and where humans could shine. Then a faint glow appeared beyond the trees, distant but unmistakable. Milo squinted. It was not natural, a signal, blinking with purpose, almost like a call. His mind raced. What could it mean? Was it a warning? Or an invitation to something larger, something beyond even the dragons? Milo's chest tightened with anticipation. The night had already tested him in every imaginable way, and now it seemed a new challenge was calling. He looked at the adult dragon, whose massive eyes followed his gaze. There was understanding there, a recognition that their bond was just the beginning. The hatchlings chirped in agreement, and Milo realized they too sensed the change. The signal in the distance was a mystery, a puzzle that promised even greater trials, but Milo felt ready. He had survived fear, tamed distrust, and protected the helpless. Whatever came next, he would face it not as a frightened child, but as someone who had proven himself capable of extraordinary things. Milo crouched beside the hatchlings, whispering reassurance. "We're not done yet. Whatever is out there, we'll face it together." The adult dragon shifted, lowering itself to brush his shoulder gently, a silent affirmation of trust and partnership. The forest seemed alive with anticipation, every leaf, every shadow, every sound holding its breath. Milo's eyes scanned the horizon, the blinking signal shimmering faintly through the trees. He straightened, heart pounding with excitement and determination. The night had tested him, but it had also revealed something incredible. Humans could earn trust, inspire courage, and change the course of history, even among creatures that had never known it before. The hatchlings looked up at him, bright eyes filled with trust, and Milo felt a surge of resolve. He would protect them. He would lead them. And together they would face whatever mysteries awaited. The signal blinked again, pulsing steadily, beckoning him forward. Milo took a deep breath, one hand resting gently on the nearest hatchling, the other reaching instinctively toward the unknown. The adult dragon stirred beside him, wings flexing in readiness, and Milo's lips curved into a determined smile. The forest of whispering scales had revealed its secrets, but a greater adventure awaited beyond the shadows. Milo and the dragons were ready to face it, together. And somewhere, deep in the alien forest, a new, unseen presence stirred. It had noticed the bond Milo had forged and now watched with interest. The story was far from over. A bigger challenge, a greater mystery, and unimaginable dangers were waiting. And Milo, the child who had survived the night and earned the trust of dragons, would be at the center of it all.